Could the good times really be back in Venezuela? In some corners of the capital, Caracas, it sometimes looks like it. This is a city which over the last year has seen the opening of hundreds of new restaurants, a mini boom in construction, even a new Ferrari dealership. Venezuela remains a country with profound economic problems. But something has changed, and it all began when the lights went out 4 years ago. July 2019, and a blackout lasting 5 days hit the entire country. The government initially blamed it on sabotage. Others said years of disastrous under-maintenance of the electricity network was the cause. Whatever the truth, the episode had a knock-on effect. In those darkest hours, with all electronic payment systems down, the government quietly removed its once strict restrictions on the use of the US dollar. It was a transformational moment. The introduction of the dollar helped tame inflation, which had been at a peak of 2 million%, destroying the value of the local currency, the Bolivar. Venezuela has since become what's known as informally dollarized. The dollar is not the official currency, but it is accepted in all businesses, with an estimated $4 billion of notes currently in circulation. In a sign of the times, even the national lottery prize money is now priced in dollars. And like in the lottery, there have been winners and losers in this new liberalization. We went to see one project in the east of the city, which in some ways symbolizes the upside of this unusual, gravity-defying economy. Fly Caracas, a multi-million-dollar wind tunnel, opened last year. One of only 3 such installations in South America, it's proving extremely popular. The director, who'd been hoping to build this since 2005, says the project only became viable when he could charge his customers in hard currency.
I think it's a big bonus because before the difficulty of not having dollars and now it's like everything dollarized, I think it was a game changer.
We saw no shortage of clients prepared to pay for this, even though the cost of a short flight, $20, is more than 1 month's minimum state wage.
I think today everyone has $20 to come and fly. For everyone, it's like able to come and fly. It's not expensive, $20.
Running a business like this, he concedes, is something of a leap into the unknown, working with a semi-official currency and negotiating plenty of other challenges. But that's business in Venezuela.
Venezuelans are used to this. It's like every day we have something new. And we are used to like deal with everything, like no fuel or this or no dollars or now dollars, but change the price. It's the way to work here.
You think you're adaptable people?
Yes, for sure. 100%. It's an extra skill.
Venezuela is not the first or the only country to use a currency which is not its own. Ecuador did just that in 2000, following a collapse in the value of the sucre. Introducing the dollar, which had the advantage that its value was relatively fixed, was a radical move to restore stability to the economy. One of the architects of the project was Alfredo Arizaga, then Minister of Finance. He says that in his country's case, dollarization has stood the test of time.
Fortunately, it has been a very successful outcome for Ecuador. The living conditions of the people have improved to a great extent, Ecuador is now the Latin American country with the lowest inflation rate.
Ecuador is fully dollarized, meaning the dollar is its only currency. Arizaga argues that Venezuela should one day probably do the same.
The only way a country where the confidence of the people has been destroyed to the degree that it has been, like in Venezuela, the only way to regain the confidence of the people is through a formal dollarization of the economy.
But there's an obstacle to full dollarization in Venezuela. President Maduro is sanctioned by the United States, as is the Venezuelan Central Bank and the country's main source of dollars, its oil company PDVSA. Replacing the national currency, which is named after Venezuela's independence hero Simón Bolivar, is deemed both politically and practically impossible under the current government. So what instead has been implemented is a halfway house solution, where retailers all accept the dollar, but the Bolivar operates alongside it. That creates a distortion. Millions are still paid in the weak local currency, but have to buy things that are priced in the stronger dollar. Especially hard hit have been teachers, who earlier this year joined other state workers protesting about their situation. Rosa Hernandez, a teacher, supplements her income at a public school by running these private classes after hours at home. She has to. Her wage from her full-time state job is little more than pocket money.
Yo mensualmente no llego ni a $20. Es la realidad.
For Rosa, post-dollarization Venezuela is almost impossible to understand or explain.
Lo que pasa es que en Venezuela está pasando algo misterioso, por no decir otra palabra, porque el pueblo, porque yo sí soy del pueblo, nosotros no tenemos sustento como para ir, por ejemplo, a un restaurante donde hay personas que se ganan hasta $500 o 400, $600 solo en una sentada en un restaurante. Yo no tengo ni siquiera para comprarme un pollo en brasa.
And it's not just the luxury of eating out which is beyond her. After years teaching others almost for free, she can't even afford to send her own son to university.
De hecho, yo tuve que decirle con tristeza a mi hijo, hijo, ya no te puedo pagar más la universidad. Y eso fue para mí un gran dolor, realmente, decirle eso.
Rosa says she still keeps her job in the public school system, not for money, but for something else.
Por amor, en realidad, sí. Todo el que sigue actualmente siendo docente a nivel público lo hace porque de verdad tiene vocación. Porque nosotros los docentes venezolanos, bueno, y lamentablemente yo diría que es bueno, de eso se agarra el gobierno, digamos así, que nosotros los docentes venezolanos somos muy pasionales. Nosotros estamos muy enamorados de nuestra profesión. Y obviamente no nos da, o sea, no tenemos el corazón como para dejar abandonados a los muchachos. Entonces, como el gobierno sabe que nosotros no vamos a abandonar a los muchachos, ellos dirán como que, bueno, les seguimos pagando migajas, pero ellos igual van a hacer el trabajo. Y lamentablemente es así. Nos siguen pagando migajas, pero los docentes seguimos haciendo el trabajo en Venezuela.
So what might be the solution? Pedro Palma has been studying and writing about the Venezuelan economy for almost half a century. He says history shows that there's really no excuse for oil-rich Venezuela to be in its current situation.
In the 1960s, in the early 1970s, I remember that, I knew people that say, well, I have to put all my savings in bolivars because that's much better than even the dollar or the Dutch mark in the future. And it's part of history. And why? Because this was a very stable economy without any inflation at all. Everybody was convinced that Venezuela was a stable economy, that the right policies were implemented here, and people believe in Venezuela.
He argues that Venezuela should be wary of dollarizing in the long term.
If we want to develop, if we want to implement a sustained development process in the long term, in the next 2 or 3 decades in Venezuela, one of the main objectives has to be the diversification of the economy. That's absolutely must in the Venezuelan case. And for that objective to be achieved, full dollarization is, a real obstacle.
So for now, Venezuela looks set to continue its strategy of operating 2 currencies at the same time. There's no question that the dollar has stabilized this country's economy, even kept it afloat, but there may be limits to how long this delicate balancing act can continue.